Good morning, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown in typhoon-infested Shenzhen, China. Today, we are being bombarded by a typhoon, or otherwise known as a hurricane in the Western Hemisphere, called Hato, H-A-T-O. And I guess they could have gone ahead and named it NATO. It would have been it would have been more correct, that's for sure. All right, let's get started as the rain and the wind howl outside my window. Today's China Rising Radio Sinoland installment is called China is the Most Plugged-In Big Economy in the World. At the top, below a U.S. political cartoon, is the following byline. Rome lived upon its principle till ruin stared it in the face. Industry is the only true source of wealth, and there was no industry in Rome. By day, the Ostia road was crowded with carts and muleteers, carrying to the great city the silks and spices of the East, the marble of Asia Minor, the timber of the Atlas, the grain of Africa and Egypt, and the carts brought out nothing but loads of dung. That was their return cargo. That is a passage from The Martyrdom of Man by Winwood Reade in 1871. Here is the actual article. I was back in the United States for summer vacation, the first time there since 2014. After moving back to China in 2010, my family and I lived and worked there in 1990 to 1997. This year's U.S. visit makes the third in 7 years. The most shocking and revealing thing that just slaps me in the face is how quickly the physical and wireless infrastructure is becoming third world. With each visit back, it just keeps getting worse and worse, with no bottom in sight. Roads and bridges are antediluvian. Signage, sidewalks, city parks, and the like are tired and stressed. Everywhere my family traveled, we saw boarded-up, closed-down businesses and abandoned residences. Many of the vehicles on the roads look like set pieces for a Mad Max movie. Dilapidated and beat to hell, these rust buckets could never get a safety permit in China or Europe. We spent 5 days in New York City, and the subway system, while quite complete, has not had a serious makeover for decades. It looks and sounds like a Clockwork Orange scene from some futuristic dystopian movie. On my 1-week Metro Pass, it reminded me that in 2015 alone, hundreds of riders were hit by the subway cars and over 50 people died from getting hit or run over just in 1 year. What the hell is that? What kind of society could tolerate such barbarity? Okay, I know the answer, a capitalist one. But still, these numbers are huge for one metro system. If that happened in any of China's dozens of subway systems, there would be loud protests on the streets or massive social media campaigns to shame the government to take action. I paid $6.25 for the privilege of driving on the Indian Nation Turnpike in Oklahoma down to visit an old friend in New Orleans. It is a paid toll road, and it was in terrible shape. Bumpy, cracked-up lanes, moonscape bridges, and at some pay booths, no one to take your money. If you don't have the correct bill, change, or credit card, then I guess you have to run the barrier and mail in the money later. Where is all that toll money going? And the libertarians want to privatize all the roads. Well, there's your proof of Uncle Sam's dumbest idea, privatize everything in America. It wouldn't make an ounce of difference. The country would still crumble to pieces because since Reagan, taxes can never go up, only down. Need I mention the lack of progress to rebuild the black wards of New Orleans? I know because that is where I stayed during my visit there. If Chinese leaders flew over the devastation of 2005's Hurricane Katrina, like King George W. Bush did, and leave hundreds of thousands of people to fend for themselves by relying on, quote, market forces, end of quote, which was bandied about then as the panacea for all the misery and death, they would be violently deposed. The Chinese demand and get the best governed, best managed country in the world. And then there is America's Kafkaesque wireless and internet non-network. It's balkanized, spotty, non-existent, and in too many places, and you end up having to pay a shitload of money on a hotspot to get a halfway decent internet connection, above and beyond really pricey mobile phone plans. Either that, or park outside a Starbucks or McDonald's and hope their router is working. Even basic mobile phone service sucks when you get out of the metro areas. It's 2017, folks, and it's all very embarrassing for the country that fancies itself as planet Earth's great technology darling. Get a life, wake up, and smell the decrepitude. And that brings us to China. When we got off the plane from Los Angeles, it was like walking through a time machine into a better, brighter future. Shenzhen is a beautiful, well-organized, well-planned metropolis of 14 million people. Not 1.4, 14. With an extensive subway system, hundreds of bus lines, high-speed train and regional bus stations, tens of thousands of taxis, a dazzling international airport, excellent, well-maintained flower and tree-lined streets, roads, and sidewalks, huge, numerous public parks, which are free, stadiums, museums, concert halls, libraries, universities, and public schools, with not a slum or a shanty town in sight, not even a poor neighborhood. Our standard of living and quality of life are 10 times better here than anywhere in the United States, even if we were rich Americans. Internet and mobile phone services are ubiquitous in China, not just in the cities, but in rural hinterlands too. I wrote about this in 44 Days Backpacking in China, when I traveled in deserted western China. So, when was Shenzhen founded? In 1980, only 37 years ago. Before that, it was a sleepy fishing village of 2,000 people. Honest, no exaggeration. Only a centrally planned communist country can be so efficient and well managed. And it's not just Shenzhen. The Chinese people are the most plugged in internet and mobile savvy people of any big economy in the world. And it's not hard here, since mobility is everywhere and cheap to boot. The internet is free everywhere you go. China has scores of national mobile phone brands. You can get an excellent 4G Android smartphone, fully decked out, for under $150. My monthly 4G mobile service is $10.60 a month for 2.76 gigabytes of 4G data and 150 minutes of national phone calls. No contract. I can add an extra gigabyte of data for $6 whenever I need to. But we need a lot less data bandwidth in China than in the U.S. because free internet connections are everywhere. Text messages cost 1.5 cents each, but are rarely used since China runs on free social media like WeChat, Sina Weibo, QQ, Zhenzhen, and many others. The Chinese would hit the streets if they were asked to pay for rip-offs like Boingo and other usurious hotspot providers. This is a socialist country, and citizens expect socialist public services. The mobile lifestyle is exploding here. China is rapidly becoming a cashless society, paying for everything with their mobile phones by using provider apps and QR codes, even with vending machines and street sellers. Some Westerners have a philosophical aversion to electronic money, and they should, since their banks are corrupt, criminal, and rapacious. But the Chinese trust their banks since none of them are private. They are all state people-owned. Did you know that the 4 biggest banks on planet Earth are Chinese? They are all communist and incredibly profitable. I bank at 2 of them. Below are growth trends just for Alibaba, which is like a hybrid Amazon plus PayPal platform. complete with graph. Under the graph it says, notice those are not annual growth numbers but quarterly. When Alipay goes global, it will bury PayPal. Thank you. And finally, Alipay charges 0.25 to 0.4% transaction fees. PayPal charges 10 times that amount. Tencent, another mobile giant, which happens to be based right here in Shenzhen, is now ranked as the 10th most valuable global brand, thanks in large part to its wildly popular WeChat social media platform. You've probably never heard of Tencent, but when WeChat goes global, WhatsApp can kiss its ass goodbye. WeChat runs circles around it. And there's a graph that shows Tencent among the 10 largest companies in the world. Sorry, my fellow Americans, but you are getting spotty, expensive internet and mobile service, and it does not seem to be getting any better, only worse. And please, don't get me started on the roads and streets. It's too darn depressing. I will be going back to America in 2019. I'm not very optimistic about improvements over the next 2 years. Sad but true. Guess I'll just have to hum the lyrics to John Mellencamp's R.O.C.K. in the USA and Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA until I go back. Then there's a photo of Shenzhen, China, and the byline below that says, "This is my home now, Shenzhen, China. Nothing you see existed 37 years ago, and now it's a beautiful green metropolis offering its 14 million citizens a high-quality lifestyle. China has built thousands of towns and cities from the ground up since liberation and the start of communist rule in 1949. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland, and wishing you a safe and pleasant day as I hunker down here in Typhoon Hato. Talk to you later.